Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Tallman, and I'm the host of our new Be Well reading series with ELJ Editions and Redacted Books. And it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And we have an amazing lineup of 3 readers. We have Jack Bedell, Elisa Gabbard, and A.E. Hines. And just to give you a little idea of the run of show, we're going to have each of our 3 featured readers read in alphabetical order of their last name for about 15 minutes. And then we will do a short open mic for some ELJ contributors at the end, and then we will end pretty promptly at 8 p.m. So if anyone has any feedback or questions, you can put those in the chat. I'll leave that open. And I just respectfully ask if you please mute your microphone when you aren't reading so that we don't have some unwanted background noise. So I'm going to start by introducing our first featured reader, who is Jack Bedell. Jack is a professor of English and coordinator of creative writing at Southeastern Louisiana University, where he also edits Louisiana literature and directs the Louisiana Literature Press. Jack's work has appeared in Had, Pigeonholes, The Shore, OK Donkey, Echo Theory, Heavy Feather, Cheap Pop, and other journals. He has also had work included in Best Microfiction, and his latest collection is Against the Woods, Dark Trunks, from Mercer University Press, 2022, and he served as the Louisiana Poet Laureate from 2017 to 2019. Let's give a round of applause to my friend Jack Bedell.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm really grateful to be here. I mean, I don't want to go into the long story of it, but it's been a long road to get back to trying to read in front of people and to share my poems and just be part of the community like this. And I'm strangely emotional and very grateful for it. So thank you so much for all of you for being part of this and letting me be part of it. As long as my voice will hold out, I'm going to read a handful of poems from the new collection. And I would normally blather about to try to calm my own nerves, but I don't want to take a chance with my voice leaving me. So I'm going to just jump right in, if that's okay. This first poem I'm going to read is a little bit of a departure for me, but it was something I was compelled to do. These poems in this latest collection were written at a time, I know y'all all felt the same as I did, that every time you turned on the news, you would think, well, it can't get any worse than this. And then the very next day it got worse, and then it just kept going in that direction. And even though I've always written poems about growing up in South Louisiana and my family and traditions here, there are times when you just can't ignore the fire that's burning in your backyard. And this poem was written just out of that obligation, and you'll recognize some of the details without me having to get too far into it. It's called Another Night, Just. Our day starts with news of another mass shooting out west. We learned about bump stocks and rushed to get things ready for the ride to school, exams, football games. And the rest rolls downhill fast until I'm on my belly in a gas station parking lot, crawling over gravel to place a jack under the axle of my truck, right next to a blown out sidewall. My daughter's crouched over asking me if I know what deposition is. Not like in court, she says, but like when big rocks break into small chunks of stuff. There's a cricket with me under the truck somewhere, and it answers with a quick scree before I can. My son's head pokes under the door on the other side. He tells us that if we slowed down a recording of a field full of crickets, it would sound just like a choir of people singing in perfect harmony. And even right there, lying on the ground, rocks cutting into my stomach, I have to laugh at how easily if and just roll off his tongue. And this next poem is about missing my mom. Until the rice boils over. If I could have her make one more meal, sweat onions and celery in a buttered skillet, roast seared on all sides and set aside on a plate, flour browning in the hot pan for gravy, her hands busy like bumblebees over azaleas. Sunlight would turn the kitchen counters honey gold, and all clanks would make song. I'd stand as close to her as I could without getting in the way. Not a clumsy child just wanting one taste, but a parent myself, willing to wait my turn until the children are done running the yard and the dog has gone to ground under the bushes. The wait would be enough. No need to hurry the fire under the rice. This next poem begins with a line from Melville. Don't think it needs any setup. It's called Dusk Meditation. And the line from Melville reads, like oysters observing the sun through the water and thinking that thick water is the thinnest of air. Sometimes the truth hides in the wide open of a shorn cane field. And no matter how you stare, its lines will refuse to define themselves. They'll pulse in the dull breeze and spread like ribbon snakes across furrows in the dirt until the whole ground blends and furls in waves. Squint all you want, or close the distance on foot. What's there to see won't shine any brighter. Open yourself to the field's expanse, like a shell in salt water. Purge your questions before they pearl. And I'm sure y'all know one of the difficulties we face in South Louisiana is coastal erosion, and it's something that's very close to my heart. I'm from Houma, which is a little town not far from the coast, south of New Orleans, by about 55 miles, and we lose and are still losing what they say around 3 or 4 football fields of land every day. And even though our recent governor, John Bel Edwards, has done great work remediating this with restoration projects and pouring billions of dollars into it, it's still something that really weighs on me, just knowing how much of my home is getting lost every day. Didn't want to write about that loss, though. And so these next 2 poems are about some of the restoration that Governor Edwards has been able to accomplish in his time. This first one is called Augury, and it's for Queen Bess Island, which is one of our barrier islands. Pelicans glide on wind currents, infinities of loops, long sweeps over gulf, short passes near their nests. The island below them rings a ghost of itself, washes out with every heavy wind, each wave pushed through by storms. 2 birds in air for each one on shore, in constant rhythm. The cadence of their lives tells stories in flattened shoregrass, single eggs in sand, movement and birth and loss. But what should they know of erosion, togetherness, space, more water around them with fewer fish to eat? And then a barge full of dredged silt beaches itself onto their sand to fill in the island shadows. How long will it take to settle all flight? This next poem is called New Beach, Elmer's Island, and it's for the Caminada headlands. Before they brought this beach back with barge after barge of sand, scraped out from the Mississippi's delta, the island had melted into a thin strip of grass where waves broke hard on their way to chew mainland coast. No headland buffer to slow down the Gulf's salt water, no room to walk, nowhere for cranes to nest. This place was a hyperlapse of loss, a door not so much unlocked as off its hinges and left to rot away. Now, though, acres of shore sprawl against the Gulf, full of shorebirds, Tall dunes ready the island for the water's hot rise, storms sure to come. One island can't stop the sinking inland or put back cemeteries and roadways washed away by tide, but it can buy us time, and all time is hope. Thank you. Just read a couple more before my voice gives out. This one's called Beach Whale, Terrebonne Parish, 2016. Hard to imagine what drew that young bull sperm inland through Sister Lake south of DeLarge. No squid to chase toward the beach, no pod to follow into the cove, only shallow, slow water and sand to hold its weight. I'd love to believe something in the line of trees along our coast stoked its primal heart. How golden it would be if the whale's old kin walked past trees like ours into their first salt water. So much better to hold that dream than know the whale swam in, dizzy from the water's heat, drunk on bacteria or gobs of loose oil, unwilling to accept the gift of open gulf and long, deep breaths. I'll close with this one. It's called Neighbor Tones, and it opens with a quote by John Coltrane. All a musician can do is to get closer to the sources of nature and so feel that he is in communion with the natural laws. In Coltrane's circle, all tone shares a common ancestor. The vibrations between F and F sharp wave an invitation. Tremolos whisper desire, not dispute. And every pitch shares a bit of itself with its neighbor, like electrons swapped during the intimacies of physics. Even when scales cannot reconcile themselves geometrically, we can choose to hear them together. We can transpose the culture of sound, make room for the diminished and the supertonic. These connections yearn to be made, even if our ears resist. How much of ourselves do we leave with each other, taking the same seat on a bench, or grabbing the same spot on the handrail to pull our weight upstairs? We share the breeze, the noise it carries, the space between us, never empty, is full of us. Thank y'all so much.
Such a pleasure to hear you read, Jack. Thank you so much. I know that wasn't easy for you. Wow. And we have more friends with us. Wow. Hi, Nisa and Anna and Joan and Christina and Michael and Bryn and Lanny and Dawson. Wow. I haven't seen her in the, well, it's not really the flesh, but wow, she's getting so big. What a beauty. Okay, so we are going to turn it over to our second featured reader, who is Elisa Gabbard. Elisa is the author of 6 collections of poetry, essays, and criticism. Most recently, Normal Distance. Everybody needs a copy of Normal Distance if you don't have one, okay? Out from Soft Skull, and The Unreality of Memory and Other Essays, a New York Times editor's pick and finalist for the Colorado Book Award. She writes the On Poetry column for the New York Times, and her work has appeared recently in Harper's, The Atlantic, the New York Review of Books, and The Believer. Her next collection of nonfiction, Any Person is the Only Self, will be out in 2024 from FSG, and you can find her on Twitter at eGabbard and at elisagabbard.com. Everyone, please welcome Elisa Gabbard.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole, for having me. This is great. This is like a great community, and I loved hearing you read, Jack. I love when people put their own name in poems. So that first poem having the word Jack in it, I love that. All right, I am going to read from my most recent book of poetry, Normal Distance, partly because I have not written a new poem since this book came out, I sometimes go months, even years without writing poems. And I'm sadly in one of those periods, but poetry is still one of my very favorite things. So I'll read a few poems from this book. This is the first poem, it's called Prelude. Every year when the lindens bloom, I think of the year when the lindens didn't bloom. This year, so far, the lindens haven't bloomed. I think of the year when the lindens didn't bloom. An idea almost comes, or it comes in disguise. It's the same old thought, but today it is startling. The way you fail to see or recognize yourself in a mirror at strange angles, thoughts almost arrive. The way an owl swoops between two black trees, only at dusk, the dusk of evening. Morning, of course, has its own foreshortened, clandestine dusk. Dusk of morning, the light on blue. Original thought was the mere idea with no shadow. The thought ever after is only shadow, and shadows are startling. The idea of beginning. My brother knows how to make a chair from the little wire cage on a bottle of champagne. I find it hard to throw away the wire when I know there's a chair inside. A chair my brother would have made, which would make it worth saving. I find it hard to throw out flowers, which were dead on arrival. Some philosophers think that your phone has a conscious mind. Same for anything sufficiently connected, like Pando, a tree that manifests as hundreds of trees and is currently thought to be dying. I haven't seen a crow in a long time. Do crows have a season? I got a book about symbols in the mail and it opened to the crow page. I'm not lying. It said because of its black color, the crow is associated with the idea of beginning. Once driving south through New Mexico at sunset, the sunset was endless. I am not sure why, geographically or astronomically speaking, it just kept glowing. I associate the idea of beginning with the idea of death. To exist at all is to enter eternity. I associate the word thing with false humility. Who am I to name a thing? Who am I with this long blonde hair? Who am I when I sleep so deeply, I wake up thinking of my childhood bed? In New Mexico, the moon rising over the mountain was absurd on its face. All ha, ha, ha.
Looks beautiful.
This is the title poem. It's called Wild Animals Normal Distance. Watching silent films in a backyard at night, I'm distracted by a bat fluttering overhead, its flight path so erratic. A moth made bright in the projector light. The day before in the park, there were so many midges in the middle distance, we couldn't estimate their number. Thousands, hundreds of thousands. A raccoon in the vines on a telephone pole. Baby bunny in the grass. However cute, I like to imagine it might be rabid. I think a little threat is necessary for happiness. I think sometimes we want to be threatened. Sometimes we want to be the threat. Sometimes when I'm standing what feels like a normal distance from a person, they keep seeming to edge away. I must keep edging closer too, or the effect would stop happening, but it continues. Like when you go into the ocean, you never come out where you went in. I'm trying to decide if Wittgenstein was sexy. It's not obvious. I think the answer is yes or unanswerable. I think delicate people are frightening, but I also think fear is erotic. Wittgenstein believed his Tractatus was the last work of philosophy that would ever need to be written, that he had answered all the important questions. He quit philosophy for a while and became an architect. He built a house for his sister she wouldn't live in. Einstein believed that publishing his theory of relativity would end all thinking about time. Now scientists believe we have a mirror universe, a reflection of our universe where time flows backward from the future to the past. The arrow of time either points in one direction or in two directions, forward and back. Why not in all directions, like a minute hand? Or in all directions, like everything? I want to experience my past again, but as I was then, doing what I did then, nothing changed. In what sense then am I not living through it again and again? Isn't the past always happening? You don't get to decide how to feel about not having free will. I heard more babies are born when there's a full moon and no one knows why. A few days later, I heard it's a myth. I heard there are land tides, and this is true. The moon pulls the land up. Simone de Beauvoir said, I cannot appropriate the snowfield where I slide. The fundamental ambiguity, how am I unlike the field when I am like the field to the field, not like anything at all? I wonder if mothers are tidal, if there are tides in the womb. Grave and gravity don't share the same root. Yesterday, I was gazing out the window and saw a squirrel try to jump from the roof of a house to a tree branch and miss. For a second, it scrambled for purchase in midair. It recognized its own death. It looked so human, like a stuntman. Was there time for fear in squirrel time? My husband and I have argued about the sky. He says there's no clouds, with clouds in the background. He says there's no trees. I say, I'm looking at a tree right now, the squirrel's gravesite. You can't just talk about the weather anymore. There's an urge to tell someone what's happening, but the people who care know, and the people who don't know don't care. Good luck feels like bad luck waiting to happen, but bad luck still just feels like bad luck. When good things happen, I don't know how to feel. It's not that I'm conflicted, more that I'm trying to use reason to determine how happy I should be. At Kennedy Airport, I had the experience of wanting to see a famous person and not care. That was a particular experience I wanted to have. Instead, during that experience, the experience of wanting, I saw someone I know from my own past. Neither of us lives in New York. Do our experiences belong to us? Are they a property, like a hat? Wittgenstein says no. Do you have to pay attention to your own desires, which you do not own, to be mindful? Can you not pay attention to your desires? Will attention excite or assuage my desire? You can't observe X without changing X. I don't care. I want to change my mind. All right. Just going to read one more. I have to find it though. Okay, this is it. It's called Genealogy, Such Deep Creases. I've known all my life that my father's Uncle Joe was killed by his wife. It was almost a novelty story, a murder in the family. At 12 or 13, I learned she was a serial killer. Joe, the third husband, she poisoned with arsenic. He was 26 when he died of kidney failure, a handsome hero pilot back home safe from the war. She brought him fresh juice every day in the hospital. I was in my 30s when I found out Joe's mother, my father's grandmother, my great-grandmother, was never the same. Joe was her favorite. Her life was ruined by grief. This woman, my great-grandmother, her name was Geneva. I had forgotten. I have a black and white photo of Geneva wearing pants, about to ride in a bucket into Carlsbad Caverns. When our lives overlapped for 5 or 6 years, she seemed already dead, still and silent. I was 40 when I learned there was no suspicion of murder until the wife's young daughter started getting sick too. A life insurance scam. They exhumed my father's uncle and Joe's older brother, my father's father, my grandfather, had to identify the body. We were in a restaurant when my father told me this. How long had he been buried? I said. Months, he said, maybe a year. I thought of the word decay. These people long dead became yet more real. It's taken my whole lifetime to understand they're real. They say never forget, but you can't remember things you haven't experienced. You can't remember things you don't know, but you can remember things you don't know you know. My best friend gave me a kimono with such deep creases that they never came out in the wash, no matter how many times I washed it. It makes me think of a study I read about once that said butterflies remember being caterpillars. I wonder what I don't know I remember on the long, boring drive across New Mexico. It's a good kind of boring, the miles of dead nothing, and then a herd of tiny antelopes. They make me think of Auden's reindeer moving silently and very fast, and they're all together elsewhere. There is the elsewhere in the poem and the elsewhere of the poem. The deer are double elsewhere. There is the past of the poem, a post-war poem, and the past in the poem, which is about the fall of Rome, which I never remember. Maybe now I will remember. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow. I just loved that set that you chose. It's always interesting after you read someone's book to, to discover which poems they're going to read. So what a beautiful selection. Thank you so much, Elisa. I love every single one of those poems. Such an honor to hear you. I had a message that there was someone stuck in the waiting room, but I don't know what to do about that. So I'm so sorry. I guess just have to keep going. I don't even see a waiting room. Anyway, so our next reader is A.E. Hines. And A.E. is the author of Any Dumb Animal. Again, another book that you need to buy if you don't own it. His debut collection, which received honorable mention in the North Carolina Poetry Society's 2020 Brockman Campbell Book Contest and was a Da Vinci Eye finalist for the Eric Hoffer Book Award. His work has been widely published in anthologies and literary journals, including most recently Southern Review, Rattle, The Sun, Alaska Quarterly Review, Palette Poetry, Rhino, Ninth Letter, and the Greensboro Review. He resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Medellin, Colombia. Find him at www.aehines.net. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. So nice to be here with all of you, and greetings from Medellin, Colombia. So I'm going to read just a few poems from the book that Nicole referenced, and I'll talk about a few of them as we go. But I'm going to start with a poem that's early in the book that's called My Father's Son. If my father was ever tender, I don't remember. By the time I could forge memories, he'd grown hard, cold, like the hood of his Pontiac on a January morning. Surely he must have changed my diaper or offered me a bottle when my mother's milk ran dry, held me when I cried. Biology has blessed us with the strongest recollection for what to avoid. So I don't know if he ever lifted my little body to the sky or carried me on his shoulders. Instead, I'm left with random sensations. The burn of the electric fence on my uncle's farm, how my father told me to grab hold of the naked wire so that I might remember, he said, so that I could learn. I can still make out my uncle's orchard, the sun glinting off the silver leaves, but not the first time I crushed a grape between my teeth or tasted the juices straight from my fingers. Perhaps there's simply too much good to remember, too little space in our brains to hold both the good and the bad. When I was 16, overtaken by desire, I first understood what my father thought of me. He said the saddest son of a bitch he ever knew lived out in the woods with a daughter who longed to be a son and a son who chased every boy in town. It was the same year he left our family. The year I discovered in his belongings a picture he had taken of me when I was 4. All cherub smile, the sun ablaze in my hair, a photo he must have treasured since he said he'd kill me before he let me have it. Which is really something when you think about it. The memory of the boy he had seen through the lens, so much better than the real thing standing right there before him. Thank you. So I got married during the pandemic in 2020, March of 2020. So it was a very small ceremony. It was actually a second marriage for me after being in a relationship for over 20 years. But when I'm in Colombia now, and the reason I'm in Colombia is because my husband's Colombian. So when we first started dating, I thought it might be good to learn some Spanish. Since Spanish was his first language. And so this poem is about that. I came down several times to Colombia alone and attempted to learn Spanish. And this poem is called Language Immersion. In the company of my thoughts, I feel more alone than ever before. But after 2 weeks, new words at last glimmer in the mind like freshly minted coins. Others appear or don't as they please, rise up from the ether, present themselves like tattered pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. I call home, and my Spanish-speaking lover says it takes time to fit them together, to twist my tongue around his syllables. When I try, each time open my mouth, I imagine he hears a donkey braying at the sky. Still, I try, and somehow we both understand. Strange how words now don't seem so important when in another life I lived with a man for whom they were everything, who hoarded them like an arsenal. For 20 years, he taught me to sharpen and hurl them like circus daggers. Every night they flew from our lips like machine gun fire, and now armed with 2 languages, my mouth so often an empty chamber, I have neither the need nor desire to reload. Thanks. My Spanish still sucks, but he loves me anyway. Let me give you guys a poem from North Carolina. This poem, and I will just as a content warning, I will say there's at least one element of hate speech in this poem. And the poem is called Almost Like Being Choked by a Lover. That summer, I follow him down to the shore amid the salt grasses, beneath languid gulls, follow their calls of longing while the sun chases our shadows east into the surf like departing souls. We bed down in the dunes. I let him touch me however he likes for as long as he dares. First day, senior year, his posse now in tow. From behind, he wraps his arm around my neck, then slams my thin body into the dirty bathroom wall. Not the first time. A whispered hiss, faggot poured over the red coal of my ear. Not the last time my trembling hands reach back to touch the face of a man who hurts me. Thanks. So I mentioned that I had been married before. So this one, for anybody in the audience who's been through a divorce, you know that there's the messy business of divorce and the messy business of separating things. And this was my attempt to try to find something, something positive, or at least something lighthearted in that experience. And I want to dedicate this to your governor in Florida. It's called Gay Divorce. Only our socks served two masters. Resting in their disarrayed drawer, our feet close enough in size that laziness, the law of community property, reigned. Why not throw the formal, the athletic, the cotton and wool together? Let them frolic a while. In the sad business of separation, we had no issue deciding who would take the dishes or the furniture. Like the blame, it was the whimsical we found impossible to divide. No one held dominion over any single pair or remembered who stuffed whose into which Christmas stocking, who first fancied this or that psychedelic pattern, or should take the happy polka dot or rainbow stripe, the sequined pictures of reindeer. It would be this orgy of color we'd have such trouble breaking apart. The sad pineapple and banana, the smiley sun-faced emoji, neon marijuana leaves decorated in confetti and red holiday balls. Always wanted to end a poem with balls. So as I mentioned, I live in both North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina originally, but and Columbia, but I lived for almost 25 years in Portland, Oregon. Met my husband there. And I was there during most of the pandemic, and certainly I was there in 2020. And this was written in the summer of 2020. And I think we all know that Portland was essentially a city on fire, and as a lot of our cities were in the summer of 2020. And this poem is written during that time. It's called This Morning After the Riots. Like the weather of my childhood in the deep South, thunder crashing over our roof, rattling every window, lightning, then hail firing down like bullets, pinging up from the ground and ricocheting off the glass. Last night, people who for weeks wore masks marched to downtown Portland and set fire to the courthouse. They burned cars and broke windows. They hurled rocks and firecrackers at the police and then looted the Louis Vuitton. All night, flashbangs, tear gas, the roar of helicopters. This morning, thunder and hail and rain. In the South, sudden storms remained mysterious, biblical. Thunder, my grandmother explained, God moving his furniture. Rain, the angels crying over some injustice done to man by other men. The sun still shining, the devil beating his wife. Another Memorial Day, another bright Monday. The sun glowering down, another white officer snuffing out another innocent Black life. This is not mysterious. This is plain as the dead man's face. Be quiet, Grandma would say, at any coming storm. The Lord is doing his work. And then it would thunder. Then it would rain. We sat at her window, still as corpses, and watched his bright finger crawl the dark, trembling sky. Thank you. I'm going to read two more. Yeah, two more. And this poem really dates me. And I think it's on Michael here, if he's still here somewhere. But this poem was first published in South Florida Poetry Journal and is in my first book. I was very proud to have it there. And it's called Bohemian Rhapsody 1991, which has an epigraph from the song that's referenced that is from the lyrics that says, "Mama, life had just begun." Queen. When Freddie Mercury was sweating out the fever, fire burning up his blood, I was 21, still in college, and dancing in a back alley bar, a place with no street number, no name, a place hidden behind a steel reinforced door so the bigots of Carolina wouldn't send us all up in flames. The boy pulling me to the floor, big torch of a man, pulled off his shirt to brandish his Navy tattoos, then placed my quaking hand on the sweaty vault of muscle and skin that shielded the base of his throbbing heart. Over Mercury's yell, he spat the news in my ear, said he had it too, the fire in his blood, asked if I cared, asked if we could both burn up together. News we all feared, expected. Freddie Mercury singing out the last lines, his voice vibrating in our chests, his words pouring out our drunken throats. We college boys and midshipmen, we married men, our wives missing us at home. All of us burning up together in that back alley bar, each one sure Beelzebub did indeed have a devil put aside just for him, that we'd all be dead by fall, that nothing anymore really mattered. Thank you. Oh, there's Michael. I see Michael there. And I'm going to close with the last poem in the book. It's a more optimistic topic. It's about death. So I've said that before. I think that joy takes care of itself, which is why we put so much sadness in art. It needs some more help. But this, I hopefully has an optimistic, I actually view this as a poem to poetry in a way as well. And it's called Dog in the Pear Tree. I tell my husband I want to be of use. Like this thin sapling, her roots spreading slow in the shallow earth of our backyard. For years, just a respite where small birds hide from hawks, a few desultory flowers, laden finally with silver white blossoms, the promise of fruit. Our old dog resides for years in the square confines of a red tin. Thin print of thorny rose crowning its taped lid. I sprinkle her like a prayer into the concave well dug fresh in our raised bed. Then loose the fibrous rope, lower black roots from the burlap sack. I tell my husband, this is what I want. No special marker, no parcel, no need to keep me like a genie in a lamp on his bedside table, or unfurl and waste me in wind and surf. Like the old dog, give me 100 ripening eyes, growing heavy, bowing the still tender limbs, the caress of damp fingers, and my round seated nubbins plucked season after season and tasted all over again. Thank you.
Wow. You know, I really enjoyed your poem ending on balls specifically. And thank you for that poem for our governor. I'm not going to say any more about that. You know, I I was hoping that Ariana would be here tonight, but she's not feeling well, unfortunately. And she's the publisher of ELJ Editions. And I really wanted her to be here for the open mic to be able to hear from some of our contributors, but that's okay. I'm going to kick it off. And then I think that Lanny and Melissa signed up to each read a poem, and then we'll probably end there. So the poem I'm going to read for you, I have a new book out. Thank you, Mr. Clifford Brooks, my brother publisher right there with his gorgeous lady. This is Poems for the People from the Southern Collective Experience Press. And the poem I'm going to read for you was published first in Emerge Journal from ELJ Editions. And Ariana wanted to do a 10th anniversary edition. And she invited some of us to write centos or centos, depending on how you'd like to pronounce it. And so I went back through the past 10 years of journals and I saw who the authors were. And I found which one of those were my Twitter mutuals. And I decided to pull a poem, a line from each one of their poems, and to create a cento out of it, which I titled Cento for 17 Mutuals. But since my book is called Poems for the People, I wanted each one of the poems to be poem for. So I retitled it Poem for 17 Mutuals. And this is that poem, and some of those people are here. So thank you for being here tonight. Poem for 17 Mutuals. I swallowed a pill. I swallowed a pine cone. The world ends like an almond tree pulled by its roots. I don't want to drive my car into that tree anymore. Cold spot near mom's favorite recliner. I've nothing to offer but that deer there, cracked at the spine, oozing onto roadside rock. My days are numbered just like yours. I flinch at each number like a gun has gone off. I'll be dead soon enough, cradled above the earth, rocked gently to sleep, to a primal white sky wheeling on. I worried there'd be nothing more than a silver vortex. In places like this, I am a ghost, a serpent that rattles against silent stone floors, in a room with glimpses of yesterday displayed along alabaster walls. Once I watched a boy disappear, under the surface, a lake. Some words are too big to mean anything. I'm saving the story for the afterlife. There's no need to close the door on your way out. Thank you. And I think Lanny and Melissa, I know you have your daughter with you, Lanny, so I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Are you ready to read, or you want me to have Melissa go first? You're ready? Or you, okay?
Yeah, Kate took her into the other room just now, so we're good. So I was going to read from Something Dead and Everything because it is an ELJ book, but then I reconsidered because it's Poetry Month and I really want to read a poem. And I haven't read many poems lately because I have a fiction book out. So I decided to read one of my favorites from Good Morning to Everyone Except Men Who Name Their Dog Zeus. And if you've heard me read this, because it's a popular one of mine, I've definitely read it before in open mics, and I hope you enjoy it. Trigger warning, sexual assault. This is called I Can't Talk About It. My gut, that vengeful city of insomniacs, swaps tales of trauma with the loose twilight. Terrified of optimistic things like the sun, it drowns my sealed lips in caffeine. I survive on muddy irrigation and anxiety, hollowed and hungry, nibbling on fingertips that stretch for perfect words and refuse to let anyone within spitting distance of this soft underbelly. My tongue, that talented freight train, has been known to tap out the rhythm to anything goes. But when anything went, everything went, and I am going anywhere and everywhere. Are you following? I can't talk about it. It's like a scream that keeps getting caught in my throat, but the scream is a pair of men's hands, and his cufflinks snag my vocal cords, just like his fingers snagged my closed eyes, dragging me from a peace I will never have again. My mouth, that deceitful poet, spoke forgiveness. But how can I forgive my skin collapsing in on itself? My bones drop away even as I stand here, and the only thing I can do to stay together is shove myself into pockets of an oversized sense of loss, because I swallowed his apology and his 3 paintings of a single taupe flower, as if jeering at the femininity he stripped from me, as if he knew this was the 5th time my body has been deadened in this way. My womanhood, that lost and weakened wheel, squeaks, even as I weep to keep things moving along. Every day I am misrepresenting myself. Am I the apple, the serpent, or the whole damn rib cage, protecting a man who refused to protect me? For years, I've been howling on the inside, raking my soul red and raw with the need to tear the story out of my body, and I still can't talk about it. It's so interesting seeing how I read this differently every time, especially when there's a baby in the other room and I'm just like having these strong emotions, but like very softly. So thank you so much for listening.
I love that poem, Lanny, and I love your book. I'm going to put a link in here so people know where to go to order it, because if you don't have a copy of Lanny's book, it is phenomenal and brave and just everything amazing a poetry book should be. So I'm going to ask Melissa Bowles to close us out with the reading tonight, and then I'll make a really quick announcement about who we're going to have in May, and then you can all be on your merry way to the next part of your evening. So Melissa, looking forward to hearing a poem from you.
Great, thank you. This is a poem that was published in Emerge's 25th issue as part of the Esperanza Corner. My book with them is mostly fiction, so I thought this would be a perfect one. So it's called Because There Is Gold. I once told someone I was broken. You're not broken, she said, but didn't offer an alternative. For there is no alternative. There is broken and not broken, in pieces and whole. And so I pretended I was not broken, that my world did not fall to pieces before puberty, that the words that were hissed at me in the darkness were never said, that I never feared anyone or wished my body was different or thought about death. I pretended I never, ever, ever thought about death, when instead I always, constantly, repeatedly think about death, about a world that is better without me in it. I saw therapists who made me say I had issues or problems, until I finally said, I feel broken. And one of them said, tell me more about that. They told me about this Japanese art, and I am not Japanese or connected to Japan, but I had never heard anything more beautiful than kintsugi, where you put pieces of broken pottery back together with gold. Gold. And I decided that instead of pretending I wasn't broken, I would gather the pieces, hold them together, and heal them with gold. And I think about death, and I wish I was different. And I love exactly who I am, because even in the broken, even amongst the things I don't like about me and others don't like about me, the things that make me feel I will be unloved and alone and broken forever, I remember that because I am cracked and broken, I am also laced with gold. Thank you.
That poem so much. I don't know why, but I'm having a really hard time navigating the ELJ website right now. Could you do me a favor and pop the link into your book, Melissa, so that everybody knows where to get it? Because for some reason it's not pulling up for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I want
Yeah.
to see it.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So, again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank Jack and Elisa and Earl AE for reading tonight, and for everyone who joined the open mic. We're going to do this reading series the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern, the same time. And next month, it's kind of a confluence of events. We have Asian American Heritage, we have Jewish American Heritage, and we have Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm going to invite 3 readers are going to be Chen Chen and Jared Beloff and Joan Kwan Glass. So it is going to be an amazing trio of readers next month. So I encourage you all to join if you can. And I'm going to leave it there because, like I said, I'm mindful of time. It's my Virgo moon. I can't help it. So I want to wish you all a good evening, and I will download this from the cloud so that I can share it, and you can share it as well with your family, friends, fans, whomever on social media, so that we can help spread the word about the series and hopefully continue this going. So thank you so much for being my very first readers. I'm so grateful to you all, and I wish you all an extremely fantastic evening. Thank you so much for your time. And as we should end, be well, correct? Be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.